Hi, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for coming out this morning. I know all of you have a lot to do on a Saturday, and we have had several members on our YGY Extension Team asking about kind of the fundamentals behind minerals. So I put together this, why do we need the mineral nutrients? Why are the mineral nutrients such a big deal in our longevity products? And so I put this presentation together to just offer kind of a biologist perspective of why mineral nutrients are important. And for those of you who are here as guests, the YGY Extension Team involves myself and a group of longevity members who have had positive experiences with longevity, see the bigger importance of getting mineral nutrients and nutrition in general out to the public. But we also know that good diets and good food is critical, and that it's not enough to start in the supermarket. You really have to know where your food is coming from. So the other thing we do collectively as a team is we try to network with, connect, and promote the local farmers, the local growers who are using regenerative practices and really building up their soil and paying attention to the nutritional quality of the crops and food they produce. So that is probably what makes us stand out a little bit from other. I know a lot of people deal with the health and wellness business. There's a lot of health and wellness coaches out there, and there are a lot of nutrition companies out there. And even within our own company, there are many different groups with many different approaches. But this is the approach we take because we're all kind of passionate about seeing our food systems change. So with that said, let's move forward here. Bottom line, it's not rocket science to raise awareness that chronic disease is really running rampant in America. It spans all genders, all colors. 6 in 10 adults in the United States have a chronic disease, according to the Centers for Disease Control of the United States of America. And the leading cause of death and disability is chronic disease. The leading drivers of the nation's $3.3 trillion healthcare bill is chronic disease. So chronic disease is kind of a big deal, but we also know that key lifestyle risks cited by the CDC as causative for this chronic disease, or certainly as factors that contribute to chronic disease, include inactivity, consumption of things we all know we shouldn't consume, like tobacco and alcohol, and poor nutrition. And I really want to focus today on the nutritional aspect of that. And the reason I want to focus on nutrition is because I see it as the best universal target for combating chronic disease. This is because everybody eats, but not everybody drinks, not everybody smokes, not everybody sits around too much. And actually, if we target activity and try to get everybody out there exercising and pumping iron without improving their nutrition, that can actually pose greater risks to their health. So I see nutrition as the starting point. There's kind of a cycle of other factors that tie in when your nutrition is bad. If you're not getting the nutrients that your body needs, one thing we notice is that people who are malnourished tend to have a lot of cravings. They also tend to not feel very good. And when you're wanting more and you're not feeling good, it drives you down this path of kind of self-medication, whether you're self-medicating with a box of Rocky Road ice cream or self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. You're doing something to staunch those cravings and help yourself feel better. So this can move into some of the bad angles, drugs, alcohol. And of course, this only furthers problems with nutrition because now you've set off a pathway that leads to poor nutrient absorption. In fact, if you're a junk food addict, tanking up on heavily processed foods with a lot of sugars, a lot of preservatives, these can start to interfere with our small intestine and the quality of health in the small intestine, and that can lead to poor absorption. As you stop absorbing nutrients, you start to feel tired, so you become less active, and now you're embracing all of the causative or contributing factors that are cited as contributing to chronic disease. So so to break this cycle, I think we can start by improving our nutrition. And a question that this leads to is, where has our nutrition gone? Why are Americans malnourished? So basic biochemistry shows us that mineral nutrients are the most fundamental nutrients, because without these, the other nutrients can't even be made. And I'm going to start the story about why we're malnourished then by focusing on these mineral nutrients. So what we're going to talk about today: what is a mineral nutrient? Where do mineral nutrients come from? How are mineral nutrients being lost from contemporary food systems? And how can I replace the missing mineral nutrients? How can we support better nutrition overall? Now, if you'll think back to the days of high school chemistry or college chemistry, you may remember the periodic table of elements. I hope it doesn't cause you anxiety. A lot of people struggle with chemistry, but I'm not going to test you on any of this. I just want you to kind of remember one of the take-home messages that we should all have graduated from high school knowing is that these elements that you find on the periodic table are the basic building blocks of matter. They're the smallest unit of matter that contains the properties of those elements. So there are actually, the number of elements are growing because of synthetic things that we do. We're learning how to add and remove protons and neutrons and a lot of particle physics stuff that I don't get into. But the upper end of this periodic table is where the more common elements are. And it's where most living things get the building blocks that make cells and proteins and enzymes and all the things that we need to keep our bodies happy. So all this red circles here show elements that are undisputably essential to all living cells. All cells need hydrogen. All cells need sodium. We think of sodium as a bad thing, but we all need it. Potassium, calcium, magnesium, manganese, iron, cobalt, nickel, copper, zinc, molybdenum, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur. These are things that we can't live without. Chlorine, try digesting any food at all without hydrochloric acid in your stomach. We need it. The blue circles highlight additional elements that are essential to human health and mammals, but maybe plants and not all living things need them as much, or they're not recognized as essential to plants. And then we've got things like these green circled elements, lithium, germanium, silver, that have reported therapeutic benefits, but aren't considered essential. And finally, we've got everything else on the table. And the fact is, we know today that our bodies are made of microbiomes. That microbiomes are associated with us. So every cell in your body is associated with about 10 microbial cells. And these support your health. We may have 1,000 different species. Actually, the numbers and the whole species concept in microbes is a debatable construct, but we've got lots of microbes there. And we don't even know what each of those needs in terms of their elemental requirements. So we do know that mineral elements form the building blocks of every vitamin, enzyme, and cofactor that our cells need to function. They make up our DNA. They make up our proteins, our lipids, our antibodies. They maintain our electrolyte balances. They form the catalytic reaction centers of enzymes. So most enzymes, many enzymes, have metal elements in the center of them that contribute to how they work. And most of all, they sustain our health. Pretty much every disease out there and certainly every disease symptom can be associated with a nutrient deficiency. So again, the information on this table is not being presented as any kind of medical recommendation. Go talk to the appropriate health professionals to get detailed advice about what you need for your health. I'm not a medical doctor by any way, shape, or means. But the symptoms on this table, let's talk about hardening of the arteries. Okay, you're building up plaque, you're building up cholesterol, all this stuff. Well, when we see this happening, we also see shortages in calcium, magnesium, zinc, vitamin D, essential fatty acids, and others. And if the problem gets bad enough, you may see heart disease develop. What about wheezing, respiratory problems, shortness of breath? Well, notice that it's almost the same list here. Asthma and COPD may be manifestations of calcium, magnesium, selenium, or vitamin D shortages. And there's a few others that may be missing in there. Okay, inflammation in your joints, bone spurs. Look at this same list, calcium, magnesium, selenium. There's a few new players like copper and zinc, phosphorus, vitamin D, essential fatty acids. Okay, without these, you may see arthritis develop. Back pain, calcium, magnesium, okay? The list goes on. Herniated discs, sciatica are diseases that are associated with this symptom, and yet we have known, if you provide the body with the elements it needs, bone tissue can be repaired, cartilage can be repaired, we can see some of these conditions reverse. Okay? Lower unstable blood sugar, chromium, zinc, magnesium, manganese, calcium, copper, others. Without these, you may, if you alleviate the nutrient deficiencies, you can see the symptoms reverse that drive diseases like diabetes and hypoglycemia. Okay? Digestive problems, selenium, zinc, copper, manganese, chlorine. Okay? These are tied into what some call malabsorption syndrome. Basically, you can eat and eat but not get the nutrients you need. I struggled with this for years, battling demonic cravings for sweets and junk food and things I shouldn't eat. It seemed like I was always clenching my fists trying to avoid the urge to eat stuff. Turns out my body was screaming for help. I needed nutrients. Okay, and that's why I had these strong cravings, because I was eating well, but I wasn't absorbing the nutrients I needed. Memory problems, boron, magnesium, zinc, copper. Okay, these can contribute to things like dementia, learning disabilities, Alzheimer's. So this is by no means a comprehensive list, but it should start awakening your awareness of the fact that a lot of our diseases can be tied to nutrient deficiencies. And the importance of that is because these elemental nutrients are the building blocks of all cells, tissues, and organs. If you don't replace the missing nutrients, there's no way you can rebuild the damaged cells, tissues, organs, and you can't restore proper function. Now, there's no good reason to assume that if we buy a pretty piece of produce at our favorite Whole Foods market, the produce will contain all the minerals you need to be healthy. This is remarkable because most nutritionists, most courses on nutrition, most fad diets and diet recommendations tell you how much fruit and vegetable you need to add, but they usually stop there. There's very rarely a discussion of learning where it was grown or what soil it was grown in or how many mineral nutrients they contain. And just because broccoli might be high in vitamin C on some USDA list doesn't mean that the broccoli you're buying is particularly rich in vitamin C or any other nutrient that you need. Okay? There are some reasons to suspect that the foods you're buying do not contain the mineral nutrients you need, and I'm going to talk about a few of those. First of all, let's talk about where nutrients come from. The mineral elements in our diet originate in soil and water. They get taken up by microbes. They get biochemically modified into organic forms and transferred to plants. Sometimes we eat the plants, Sometimes we eat the animals that eat the plants. Depends on your dietary preferences. But if we look at the most productive ecosystems in the world, the soils typically contain pretty much every element on the periodic table. Now, some of those heavier metal elements and heavier elements at the bottom of the table may be extremely rare, and we won't get into those, but certainly there's a rich mixture, 60, 70 mineral elements that you might find in a soil like this. Decisions made in the last 150 years have really contributed to the loss of bioavailable elements in our farm soils where we're growing our food. For example, flood control systems. Most of our rivers today are very heavily harnessed. We don't have villages wiped out by floods like we did in the 1930s and 40s. But we've also prevented the overflow of silt that the floods brought in that deposited new minerals in our farming valleys. And so we're not replenishing the mineral mixes. A long time ago, people cooked using wood as our primary fuel source. And when that wood was burned, there was ash remaining. That ash got taken outside and sprinkled on the soil, sometimes on the garden. We knew it helped grow better food. In fact, wood ash was a prime commodity. It was sold as a fertilizer. But we're not using wood ash anymore. We also use a lot of agrochemicals to manage pests and diseases on our field crops. But many of these agrochemicals also destroy the soil microbial populations that mobilize soil minerals. What you're looking at here is a photograph of the inside of a plant that's been stained to highlight the presence of these microscopic fungi that live inside of it. So these long dark strands are fungal hyphae. You can see some big dark fungal lipid bodies. Fungi, plants have a microbiome just like we do. And when you spray them with chemicals, you change the nature of that microbiome, just like when you take an antibiotic, you change the nature of your gut microbiome. Believe it or not, food safety regulations can destroy enzymes and microbes that actually aid our food. They help us digest and absorb more nutrients from the food. So there's a real catch-22 here, because obviously we do want food that is safe and sanitary to eat. We don't want to consume salmonella. We don't want E. coli. But we need active enzymes and we need beneficial microbes in order to carry out the kind of digestion that's going to ensure we are maximizing our absorption of nutrients. As early as 1906, the United States Department of Agriculture was defining a so-called complete fertilizer as a fertilizer that contained 3 primary plant nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. What this means in a practical sense is that for more than 113 years, accepted farming practices have been removing numerous elements from the soil, because every plant pulls lots and lots of trace minerals out of the soil. But we've only been replenishing the soil for the most part with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and maybe now and then we'll throw in some other key macronutrients. Mainstream science has invested very little in monitoring the trace elemental composition of our nation's soils. Available studies are sparse and only monitor a few nutrients. One of the more comprehensive studies that was done examined nutrient deficiencies between 1950 and 1999. They looked at the amount of nutrition that was available in foods based on USDA studies in 1950 and compared those to what was present in the foods studied in 1999. And they concluded that as a group, the 43 foods showed apparent statistically reliable declines, an R value of less than 1, for 6 nutrients: protein, calcium, phosphorus, iron, riboflavin, and ascorbic acid. So they clearly did see some losses. Now, other nutrients did not show declines, But this should raise some awareness for all of us that our soils are not producing the nutritional health that they, food with the same nutrient content that they used to. And almost nobody is tracking the real trace elements, those that we need very tiny amounts of, and those that maybe have not been agreed upon by the nutrition community at large as essential. So for example, how much vanadium did you get in your breakfast this morning? How would you find out? Odds are you have no way of knowing. So the bottom line here is that we know we need more than 20 primary mineral elements in our diet. We don't know if we need small amounts of other minerals at times. We know that foods grown in depleted soils will be deficient in at least some elements. We know that many common diseases are associated with deficiencies in elements like calcium, magnesium, zinc, copper, boron, and others. And so with this in mind, if you are experiencing negative health symptoms, I think the odds are high that you may be missing nutrients, particularly some of these mineral elements that are missing from our soils. Now, it's hard to go to a doctor and get tested for trace elements to find out what your level of chromium or cobalt or molybdenum might be. And there's not a medication out there that will correct nutrient deficiencies. But we do know there are safe levels of these diverse mineral nutrients that can be taken to address some of those deficiencies. So, what decisions can we make about the value of those trace elements that nobody is calling essential? Do you take them? Do you not take them? Well, when I asked myself this question, I decided to answer it with principles I learned in restoration biology. So one of the key factors we look at on a restoration site is the diversity of life. If a piece of land is producing an abundant and diverse community of living organisms, you don't really consider that soil highly toxic. Many healthy soils might contain 60 elements or more that can be detected with instrumental analysis. And this includes things like low amounts of tin and lead and cadmium and uranium, other really toxic substances. And these sites still continue to support lavish growth if those heavy metals and toxic substances fall below a certain level. So we don't look at whether or not something's there. We look at whether or not it's there in amounts that are known to be toxic. And those low levels are considered perfectly safe. Biologically derived minerals, those found in living soils and living plants, and in the remains of living plants, believe it or not, very ancient shale mines and these kinds of things can contain a lot of biologically derived minerals. These molecules tend to resist accumulation in the body because they can easily be eliminated. So to explain that, both plants and microorganisms are very adept at making proteins and other organic ligands that will bind to these mineral elements and make them less toxic, easier for living systems to manage. So the form your metals and your minerals are in makes a big difference in terms of how our body responds to them. We know that diversity, complexity, and balance are all the norm in healthy ecosystems. And we know that every vitamin, mineral, or cofactor you take is going to require other components to ensure it's properly metabolized. So I tend to avoid using drugs or isolated, you might call them fractionated supplements. For example, I don't take pure vitamin C under any circumstances. I'd rather eat an orange or take a supplement that is rich in vitamin C but also contains the other vitamins, minerals, cofactors, and nutrients that help my body make the most of that vitamin C once it's there. So when it comes to the decision about do or don't I want a very complex array of mineral nutrients in my diet, I think back to Liebig's law of the minimum. Justice von Liebig was a scientist in the 1800s, an agronomist. His law was initially applied to crop nutrition, but it could be applied to any living system. And he basically told us that growth is dictated not by the total resources available, but by the scarcest resource, the limiting factor. Basically, this means that the growth necessary for repair and recovery in our bodies is dictated not by the total amount of nutrients available. Oh, I took 2,000 milligrams of calcium today. But by the scarcest nutrient. What's that one little factor that you're missing? Think of the old adage that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Take all the calcium you need, but you're a little low in magnesium. Might not do you any good. It might give you digestive problems. It might trigger other imbalances. So by taking safe amounts of supplements that contain everything you need, you avoid those kinds of failures that are caused by missing resources. Now, if you've tried supplements to benefit your health and you've seen no improvements within 90 days, this is my opinion. This isn't something that's been censored and approved by the FDA. And I certainly welcome talking to your appropriate healthcare officials before you make up any decisions here. But if you're not seeing improvements within 90 days, it's very likely that either you are taking fractionated supplements, so you're missing one of those minor nutrients you need. You might be taking a bad formula. There are a lot of supplements out there on the market that don't contain what they say they contain, or they contain what they say they contained, but it was grown on bad soil, or it wasn't processed, handled in a way that makes it effective. Maybe you're not taking enough of it. Maybe you're not taking it consistently. And maybe your risky lifestyle habits, things like drug consumption, alcohol, junk food, lifestyle habits, are just so extreme that no amount of supplementation can overcome the damage that you're doing. In that case, you need to look beyond supplements for the changes you want to see. Now, Longevity International offers an extensive line of nutritional supplements. The company was founded by Dr. Joel Wallach, who is both a naturopathic doctor and a renowned veterinarian, who actually was involved as a biomedical scientist in autopsy studies looking at nutrition and related pathology in more than 400 species. There's a fascinating movie about him available at joelwallachdocumentary.com. Longevity's formulas all use biologically complex and relative whole food alternatives for the most part. He's using whole plant parts, whole, very complex nutrient sources in their formulas, and their minerals are plant-derived. He offers this as an alternative to the more fractionated nutrition many of us have been introduced to. He talks about providing 90 essential nutrients. Now, the FDA is not going to list 90 essential nutrients in the recommended daily allowances, but he has found good results. And basically, when he talks about 90 nutrients, he is including minerals that come out of remains of a shale mine that was once part of an ancient forest. So everything in there is basically biologically derived and preserved This is a biologically complex matrix. You're getting lots of mineral nutrients in there. Longevity International has been using these plant-derived minerals from the same humic shale mine as the foundation for its mineral supplements for more than 20 years. They have an established history of safety, positive results, and FDA compliance. In fact, they're a public listed company, so they're definitely on the radar and they're doing things compliantly. Their healthy body packs offer a tested starting point for meeting your nutritional needs. This healthy body pack was designed to give you all of your 90 essential nutrients daily. It consists of a product called Beyond Tangy Tangerine that's both a multivitamin and multi-mineral complex. It also contains probiotics and prebiotics that are designed for good absorption. It's really just a great mixture. Because of the way it's formulated and because it's a liquid, it's very absorbable as well. So those of you who have intestinal problems and absorption issues, this is a product that we see a lot of people having good results with. Okay. Their EFA Plus provides the essential fatty acids that could not be blended into the Beyond Tangy Tangerine formula. Oils are just a little hard to mix into that. And because we need so much more of the bone and joint minerals, things like calcium and magnesium, even boron, then you might pull directly out of the shale mine. The OsteoFX has been supplemented with additional levels of plant-derived calcium and phosphorus and boron. All of these products in the Healthy Body Pack are checked by independent agencies to verify that harmful contaminants are not in there and the supplements actually contain the ingredients that are on the label and nothing else. And these independent certifications vary among Longevity's many products. So while the Healthy Body Pack does have this independent certification, you really need to kind of look at each product on a case-by-case basis. Okay, here's the starting prices, and we are in the process of transitioning to an annual membership fee that was not present in the past. This will help keep the business maintainable and sustainable for everybody. So you can purchase it directly retail, or you can buy it at wholesale pricing as a member. So what can you accomplish in 90 days on a Healthy Body Pack? And if you're thinking about membership, Longevity membership allows access to more than 1,000 products and services. These certainly include the nutritional product lines. There's a fantastic product called Hyperimmune Egg that we've got a presentation coming up for. You don't want to miss the talk by Dr. Glenn Winkle. We've got green cleaning products for your household, organic foods, coffee, tea, beverages, CBD oil, hemp. We've got a new Hemp FX line. We've even got things like travel and shopping discounts, clothing, makeup, and business services. And if you make your purchase through members of our YGY Extension Team, you're buying from a team that is really committed to increasing awareness about nutritional health and about how to rebuild our soils, rebuild our food systems, so that in addition to great supplements, more of our communities can have access to locally grown healthy foods. We even have a scholarship that supports students in the College of Agriculture at New Mexico State University who are committed to regenerative farming. So thank you so much for joining us today, and please get back to the Longevity distributor who invited you here.